So welcome back. We're in the Nefesh HaHaim, Sha'ar Gimel, Perek Gimel, third Perek, and more caution from the Nefesh HaHaim. And he's actually going to intimate why he dared to write the Sefer. He says, ordinarily I wouldn't even dare to write about this stuff, but he felt forced to do so by what was going on in his day, which he's pretty explicit. He's not explicit, but it's pretty clear he's referring to the rise of Hasidism. And so he feels a need to counterbalance that as like a different approach to the learning of Pnimius HaTorah, the inner secrets of the Torah. So let's pick up here at the beginning of the chapter. V'hu inyan hakasuv. We're talking about Hashem is mekoimo shel olam. God is omnipresent, and it's much more than that. He's really the only thing that exists. Halo es hashamayim es haaretz ani malei. So God fills the heavens and the earth. V'yoiser mefurish, even more in Mishnah Torah. V'yadata yom ki Hashem hu Elokim mishamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachas ein od. Okay, there is nothing else. V'chein atahareisa ladas ki Hashem hu Elokim ein od milvado. So really famous words, and we know a niggin, ein od milvado, and hu mamish k'mashmo. So the Nefesh HaHaim here says, you could think it's an exaggeration, it's a simplification, and he emphasizes, no, this means exactly as it states, ein od milvado, hu mamish k'mashmo, she'ein od milvado yitbarach, klal, b'shum b'china v'nekuda pratit, shebekol ha'olamois elyoinim v'tachtoinim v'yabriois kulam. There is nothing else except Hashem. There's no hiding place. There's no specific points in any world above or below in all the creations. Rak atzmus achdusoi hapashut yizbarach shmo levad. Incredibly sweeping statement that the only thing that truly exists is atzmus achduso hapashut yizbarach shmo. The essential oneness, the essential simple oneness of God's unity is really the only thing that exists. So again, you're at a huge kasha. So what about me? And what about everything else that I come into contact with the Bria? How do I understand its existence? And again, including my own existence. So that's the challenge, the philosophical challenge. V'hu pnimius amoram zal bidvarim rabba. He quotes a midrash now, Ki Hashem hu Elokim, and then he quotes it. He skips through it. He doesn't say it over. So I have it here from Rabbi Frankel. So I'll say it better. We're talking about the verse Hashem hu Elokim. So Chazal said Yisro related to other gods. Ata yadati ki gadol Hashem mikol Elohim. So like Yisro is putting God, God is greater than all the other little g gods. But that's not so great. Naaman, he was the general from the Assyrians. He partially related to this concept as, now I know there is no God in the entire world apart from in Israel, in Malachim. Rachav related to this concept more deeply and placed Hashem in the heavens and the earth. For the Lord your God is the God of the heavens above and the earth below, which we say in Aleinu L'Shabeach, Vashamayim Mimal Ha'aretz Mitachas. Moshe related to the concept in the deepest way, and even placed God as being the space of the universe. Hashem Elokim Vashamayim Mimal Ha'aretz Mitachas Ein Od. What does the verse mean by saying Ein Od? Afilu Bechalalo Shel Olam. So this statement describes the different ways in which it is possible to relate to the degree of God's manifestation and unity within the world. It explains that the ultimate way of relating to God is as Moshe Rabbeinu related to him. There's absolutely nothing else in existence apart from him. Reb Chaim is emphasizing the deeper meaning of Chazal's statement by quoting this section of the Midrash, which relates to Moshe Rabbeinu's understanding. That's really the Torah. The Torah is that, it's kulo shemoisav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all about how Hashem manifests himself in the Bria, which, the Bria is so diverse. There's so many different things going on in creation. And yet these are all means of Hashem manifesting himself. Ki ein od milvado. Mahu ein od afilo bechalalo shel olam. Even in the voidness. I mean, again, there's ein od milvado. There's nothing else. No place. No nothing. Nada. Bezeu gam kein bichlal mamaram zal shu yizbarach mekoimel shel olam. That's where we began Sha'ar Gimel, that Hashem is called mekoimel shel olam ve'ein ha'olam mekoimo. He is the place that contains everything. Hainu she'af kol ha'mekoimis shemurgashim lechush b'metzius. All the places and the things that seem to, exist, ein ha'mekoimis mekoimis atzmiim. They're not independently existing. Elohu yizbarach shmo, hu hamakom shel kol ha'mekoimis. Hashem is, let's call it, behind or within everything. Shemitzido yizbarach nechshavim kulam ki'ilu einam b'metzius klal. From Hashem's perspective, it's as if these things don't exist whatsoever. Gam ata, today, now, kikoidim habriya. And that's actually a little bit helpful, because we have this nusach in the Siddur. He's going to mention it. We say, Atahu mishen nivra oilam, ad shelo nivra oilam, atahu mishen nivra oilam. We know that God doesn't change. God is unchanged since before he created the universe, and today that we're here. So, how do we, again, reconcile that? God is unchanging. He's the perfect being. He always was and always will be. And there's really no other existence besides for him. And nothing happened from before he did it and now that he did it, and we're here. So it must be that the existence, although we come into contact with all sorts of stuff, but really those things from Hashem's perspective, ki'ilu einam b'metzius klal, as if they don't exist whatsoever.
Can we say nothing happened?
We don't say nothing happened because he created the universe, and that did happen. Yes. Yeah. Good evening, Jay. Welcome. I didn't see you.
Right.
For sure. We don't want to say that nothing happened. And again, Reb Chaim has already cautioned us about this, and he's going to caution us more. So we don't want to negate the existence of everything on the one hand. On the other hand, ein od milvado kipshuto mamish. So it's a conundrum. It's an oxymoron almost. Omnam kvar hikdamnu betchilas dvareinu. I've already told you that the words of Chazal are like a smoldering ember, and you have to be really careful with them. So here he's setting boundaries again and telling us, he's putting this out there for us to think about and learn, but don't get lost and don't get messed up or enter, confuse yourself philosophically with these things. B'dvarim she'ein hareshut netuna litbonen harbei v'yichveh chas v'shalom. So again, he's not doing something usher by putting this out there, but he does want to warn us, don't let it stare you, don't let it destroy you or your faith or anything. You can be exposed to it, you can warm yourself from its light and its heat, but don't get burnt. So he calls this an inyan noira. Again, this is a very, very serious topic about God's immanent presence and that he's the only true existence. Ein hadavar amur, who's allowed to come to this class? Chacham umevin midaito. So everybody here qualifies, Baruch Hashem, as a chacham umevin midaito. But he's saying that, these very nuanced and very subtle ideas have to be treated with care. Maybe midaito pnimius ha'inyan b'shiura deliba levad b'ritzov v'shov. And again, we see this terminology that we saw last week of running forward, but then coming back, of exercising caution not to overextend and go too far until you fall off the cliff. Even the angels are ratzov v'shov, because no one can truly know God's essence except God's essence. And so we can approach, but then we have to retreat to safe ground. Lahalhiv bezeh tohar libo lavodas atfila. The reason we do this and why we shouldn't just close the book and say, okay, forget it. If I can't totally understand it, then why waste my time with it? No, because this is exciting. And this is man's yearning to know his creator. That's a very holy feeling. And so your heart catches on fire with purity, pure love for avodas tefillah. This arouses one to daven better. And so that's why, this is worth studying and worth thinking about. You just have to be cautious. Aval Ravi's boinanus bazeh hu sakana atzuma. Look how strong he emphasizes the danger. Sakana atzuma. Ve'al ze nemar b'sefer Yetzira ve'imratz libcha shuv lemakom. Like we brought last time. And we're going to talk about it more. Mirtz Hashem lahalam perek vav. So again, it's handled with care. Ube'emes hayiti monea atzmi meledaber be'inyan ze klal. The truth is, the only reason I'm talking about it is what I'd call a horas shah. Ki harishonim zal histiru ha'inyan ma'od. You don't see this in Rashi and Tosfos. And even the Ramban and the more philosophical and Kabbalistic Rishonim, they're very, very careful with their words, and they don't want to lead you astray. So they're very cautious. Kamoshetire divrei kadosh Hashem rokeach. The rokeach is from the German pietists. Zal the huva le'el shelo diber b'zeh rak beremez. If they spoke about these issues of God's presence and existence and so forth, and how to understand our existence in relationship to that, they spoke about it, only through illusion and in a limited way. Kinamana et kol rucham v'kasu davar. They were very faithful to keep things covered and not to expose them, that people shouldn't get confused or go off the derech. So why is Reb Chaim then allowing himself to write the book and put these ideas into the Reshus HaRabim? Aval shavti v'ra'iti. It's because of my observation of what's going on in the world in the 1820s. Shekach haya yafe lahem lefi doiroseihem. That was in the good old days. Jews were simple and happy. Aval ata hein yomim rabim lelo moire. But we are in a generation without leadership. I saw the notes of Rabbi Frankel said, this refers to the time after the death of the Vilna Gaon, who passed away in 1797, and now maybe we're 10 or 20 years later, and he feels there's been no one to take his place. And the Vilna Gaon, who, he put a cherem on the Hasidim, and now who's fighting that battle to sort of control the spread of Hasidut in Lithuania and throughout Eastern Europe. So that's what I think he's talking about. We'll see more in a minute. V'kol derech ish yashar be'einav. Everybody finds their own way and thinks, oh, well, I'm okay, you're okay. And I could be from in my own way. La lochach rei netia sichlo. And they're getting in deep, let's say, into Kabbalah, into ideas. B'kol yetzer machshavos leva adam malei rak lauf b'machshavto el kol asher ya'anu sichlo. People are not putting boundaries on themselves. They're trying to fly as high as they can. And the truth is, there were people. Let me share a story with you. There was, before the Baal Shem Tov even, there were people who were oiskim in Kabbalah on very, very high levels, like the Megala Mukois, and people then who were Talmidim of the Arizal. And so we're talking about, let's say, in the 1600s in Eastern Europe, and it's around the time of the Shloah Kadosh, really holy people who are leading very serious lives of Avodas Hashem. So there was a group of people like this, and they had a rule that you were not allowed to prophesy. Okay, so think about that. Do you think we need to put that up in shul, that you're not allowed to prophesy? I don't think anybody, thinks they're going to prophesy. So this shows these people, they were on the verge of prophecy. Very holy and serious people who maybe were deluding themselves. I'm not saying they were or they weren't, but they realize that they're at the cusp. And they're really close to God, and they have to be really careful. And again, the example, the person that went overboard was Shabtai Tzvi Yamach Shemo. So you had people who were very serious about spirituality, but weren't necessarily keeping all the rules. And so Reb Chaim Volozhin here is being very careful about it and talking about the dangers that are going on in his day of everybody trying to fly and people not staying grounded. Va'oila al kulam. שזה תוירס כל האדם נעשה משל גם בפיקסילים. You have unlearned people who are now learning Sifrei Kabbalah / Sifrei Chassidut. So Chassidut and the Chassidus of the Baal Shem Tov, you now have people who don't understand a lot of the Gemara, Rashi and Tosfos, and they're talking about spherois and really high Kabbalistic ideas in their fulfillment of mitzvahs. And to a Litvak like Reb Chaim Volozhin, this is awful. This is terrible because these people don't realize what they're talking about, and they're talking about Atzmuso Yisbarach, and God is here and God is there, and they're messing it up, and that's awful. Lemor halo bechol makom v'kol davar hu Elohut gamur. Everything is God. So this is the danger that we mentioned of pantheism. And for sure there are and definitely were people in the Hasidic camp that fell into the trap of pantheism and saying everything is God. And the next step, and he's going to mention it, is so then Chazir, is not really different than kosher flesh because everything is all godly. And so the boundaries of Shulchan Aruch, those are artificial because really God manifests himself in the treif, no different than the way he manifests himself within the kosher.
But
And
just
so,
because something is godly doesn't mean you're permitted. I mean, that started from Gan Eden. The Eitzadat Shel Tavara, it was a godly creation. It was certainly God, there was godliness, Elokut infused into it, but we weren't allowed to benefit from it. We weren't allowed to take it. I mean, we did, and it caused the whole balagan, Adayom. But it doesn't mean just because the Chazir is there, oh, yeah, God created it, but you're not allowed to have it.
It's not God created it. This is Elokus Mamish. First of all, you're more subtle, right, than these simpletons that he's critical of. But again, think of their claim is that, anything that exists essentially is God, which we wouldn't say that, but that's what they're saying. Halo bechol makom v'kol davar hu Elohut gamur. Okay, so once you say it's God, how can it be asur or bad?
Elokut gamur, as opposed to having a piece of, I mean, like we're all born with Tzelem Elokim or whatever. I mean, we have a little something of the Elokut in us. So they're saying if something or someone has Elokut, or are they not saying it's like a part? They're saying Shaveh le. I mean,
Ein od milvado. There's nothing else. It's all God. Okay, it's a really sweeping statement, and if you open the Sefer Tanya, it's there a lot of times, and so
and that's how you get a guy coming along saying that he's God.
Yeah,
and look what happens.
Jay.
So you think it's primarily directed at the Balatanya and the Tanya?
Not him himself, but his followers. Yes, he's about to mention young people, especially who are easily swayed and they're excited about it. Basically, Hasidic yeshiva bakrim who are not really mature enough and ready to learn these, sisrei Torah, these secrets of the Torah, these deep philosophical ideas, and so they get carried away with themselves and they get to wrong conclusions, which are dangerous.
Is this pre or post Haskalah, the Haskalah, or where are we at?
Pre-Haskalah. Like I said, we're in 1820, I would put it in.
It was just starting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So when did the Welt, kind of soften up to, was it because people became more educated, that it became safer, or like we don't have this harshness today looking at the Hasidut? Obviously it's much broader. It's not a burgeoning fledgling movement. It's quite widespread.
And from some perspectives, it saved Klal Yisrael after the Holocaust. There weren't a lot of frum people who were not Hasidic. And so in America, in the yeshivas, like in the Telz Yeshiva and the real Nefesh yeshivas, the Bachrim were all Hasidim. They're from Hasidic families because of the Haskalah, like you mentioned. So yeah, the Hasidic movement has moved to, respect halacha greatly. At the very beginning, when the Vilna Gaon expressed his skepticism and his antagonism towards it, it maybe did pose a real danger to mainstream normative rabbinic Judaism, but partially because of the opposition of the Misnagdim. So it had towed the line. And so today, halavai, I could say it's a happy marriage between the Misnagdim and the Hasidim, but we're all here and we're together in in political parties, the Moetzes Gedolei HaTorah, etc. There is respect in the camp for them.
Well, I would also think that the Hasidic movement was also a social movement, in that, they valued every Jew, even someone who was not learned at all, and perhaps ascribed to them the same level of holiness to someone, let's say, who is learned,
Absolutely true.
because they've got other spiritual qualities. So I guess it kind of downgrades the learning. It's not as important, because those were the people that were attracted to it, I guess, initially. They were people that were not learned. Again, the leaders were learned, obviously,
Right.
but the Hasidim weren't necessarily. And that was closed. I think, the yeshivas were really kind of a closed system. It was hard to break into it, I think.
You had to be rich.
Rich, or to be, an
From the
Italy,
families. Yeah.
You would have thought. I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it was tough to break into it. It was a kind of an elite society. And so a lot of people, were not part of this. It was only very,
Maybe because you had that dialectic between what you're saying are the elites and the others, that this developed in Europe, because I would have thought that type of Yahadut, the Hasidut, might have started in the Sephardic cultures, where they weren't really, the Haskalah, or the learning wasn't as widespread, and you didn't have such an elite, you didn't have those big yeshiva that you had in Europe. You would have thought that that spiritual, and they seem to be more spiritual, that it would have come out of their cultures, and yet it didn't.
maybe everybody was, felt that they were in the same boat as far as
Well, right,
with the exception
right.
of the HaHaim, the leader of the religious leader of the community.
Right,
That's
as
one.
opposed to
But everybody
an
else,
elite class, like you were mentioning.
everybody else was, I mean,
The Sephardic community didn't break up, whereas the Ashkenazi community was broken up by, like Jay said, a social revolution. Hasidism started as a social revolution because of the elitism of the rabbinate and the rich people. They controlled everything, and other people felt disenfranchised. And so they rose up, and there was a Hasidic movement that said every Jew is holy. And that was very attractive to, the poor people who were unlearned and outside the circle of the in-group. Whereas in the Sephardim, they did a good job of maintaining unity by and large. Of everybody went to shul and davened together, and they had great respect for the Chacham. And so they didn't have that revolution, and they continued to be a unified group until the founding of the state of Israel. And they came here and had the religion stolen from them. Steve, what did you want to say?
Seems like it was a necessary correction to have that gigantic shift. I'm wondering if I sarcastically said, are they too happy so they arouse suspicion? Like if I see a guy jumping up and down by the kotel wearing a stocking cap, I assume that he's somewhere in the DSM manual, but that doesn't mean I'm right. So I think that you want to bring back the old intellect and quit dancing around. What does he want to do? Take all the fun out of life?
Well, we're 200
What's
years
his goal?
later. Yeah. What's his goal? His goal,
Why
again,
doesn't he just go with the trend to, the Hasidim are going to be the last people standing, probably.
maybe it was a
According to some
defensive
people.
action.
Maybe
That
that's not the word then.
they felt perhaps, attacked. It felt like,
For sure,
you know,
they're under attack. They are under attack. The Chassidim won't eat from their shechita, and they won't daven in their shuls. So there's an open rebellion. And listen to what he says about it. He feels that there are ksilim, which are fools, that are delving into the most subtle aspects of Jewish philosophy and claiming that everything is the divinity. Ve'einam belibam kol hayamim lahamik la'ayen bezeh. And instead of learning Gemara Rashi Tosfos, they're learning Sifrei Kabbalah. Ad shegam na'arim menu'arim. So these are kids who have no chokhmah. Mimashchiluhu libayu likboa kol ma'aseim v'hanhagasam bezeh lefi siklam zeh. So you have these youngsters who really don't understand anything. They're immature, and they determine their actions and behavior based on this rationale that everything is divine. And so our attitude towards the Shulchan Aruch changes entirely. Kama zihirus yiseirat sarich ha'adam lihizaher bezeh v'lishmor et nafsho me'od b'mishmeret l'mishmeret. You have to guard your guarding. She'im chas v'shalom yikachenu libenu likboa lanu machshava zu lahatir la'atzmenu lisnohe gam b'maisa lefi hamachshava zu. You can't behave practically according to the thought that God is everywhere and nothing else really exists, because you're going to break all boundaries of Isser v'Heter. He's going to speak it out. Halo yucha livaled mizeh chas v'shalom harisat kama yesodot haTorah kadoisha rachmana litzlan. You're going to break down the legal system of the Torah and the sanctity of the Torah. Uvenekel yuchal lehilached chas v'shalom bereshet hayetzer. Okay, the Yetzer Hara is now going to play on you and say, what's the difference between Isser and Heter? It's all God. Shire'elo hetera al pi machshava zu derech mashal leharher b'divrei Torah b'shat nefesh af b'mekoymes hamatunafim. Why can't I think divrei Torah in the bathroom? Okay, and remember, everywhere was a bathroom for them because they had outhouses. And so there was a lot of smelly places all over the place. Chazal refer to them in the Gemara's muvos mutunafim. And the Torah is makpid on that the Torah doesn't belong in a dirty place, a filthy place. And so, but you think to yourself, but God is everywhere. Even in a dirty, smelly place, it can't be absent of God's presence, because hu mekoymel shel oilam. God is omnipresent. So here you're going to take the Torah and you're going to put it in a filthy place because you're learning Kabbalah. And in Kabbalah we learn that everything is God. So how could it be that I'm not allowed to think Torah in the bathroom? Everything is divinity. And Chazal are very makpid on this. Kartuhu Beruach Kodsham mihiyot lo chelik lal mabarat rachman litzlan. He's going to lose his portion in the world to come because of this. Kamo shekasav it's a Gemara in Brachos shebeklal kidvar Hashem baza hu gam hameharher b'divrei Torah b'mevos hamatunafim. Someone who actively engages in thinking in divrei Torah in filthy places is considered dvar Hashem baza. Umamela nishma sefer de haikra hikares tikares upershu zal beperek chelik hikares boilam hazeh tikares loilam haba ve'oid kama ta'uyot sheyuchal letzet chas v'shalom im hayanikba hanahaga b'maiseh al pi zeh haderech. So you got to be really careful. Steve,
Are you saying that Hasidim would bring in a chumash to the outhouse, or are they just aware that Hashem knows everything that's going on every place, including outhouses? I mean, what are we talking here? I mean, would they really bring a chumash in?
Maybe their body smelled like an outhouse.
Jeez, come on.
Oh, I'm serious.
Well, that's probably true. That's
What do you got to clean yourself for? You know?
What?
why do you have to clean yourself for? Everything is Hashem, and holiness, and
It doesn't mean everything goes out the window. I
well, you
mean,
can take
that's
it to
why
an ex
J.D. Salinger caught on, where everything turned into milk that the person was drinking in Catcher in the Rye or wherever it was. Uh, he had a mystical moment. Everything
well,
was milk.
glad you remember that.
Remember that? I don't know,
So
like he's really incriminating something fierce, you know?
Yes, I agree.
And
He's
you
in
would hate to
battle.
think that they were taking a shortcut, but maybe they'll wind up in Gehenna, Why is he worried about it?
No, because he's worried about it spreading. The Hasidic movement was growing at this time,
It
and it's
still is.
attracted. Well,
How's he doing?
no,
I don't
today
know.
I'll tell you, there's Lakewood Koilalim opening up all over America. So he's also his world is also growing.
Well,
Um,
but
so, but
it,
there definitely is a danger here. There's a
so,
danger to the concept of Isser v'Heter and the boundaries of halacha. Once you establish the philosophical idea that God is everywhere and everything, so then it puts into question all the things I'm not allowed to do.
so
And
where is God vis-a-vis outhouses? I mean, how do you put that into a normal sentence? I mean,
okay, that is a good question. And I want to tell you something that happened to me years ago. I went to Tzfat for
uh-oh,
Shabbos, Hanukkah,
sorry.
and I was hosted by a family, a Hasidic family, I think Chabad, and the young man, the Balabait, he wasn't especially learned, but so he said the machloikis between the Balatanya and the Vilna Gaon is God in the bathroom. Okay, like
Okay, so
yeah,
what
right.
would the Vilna Gaon say about that?
So that's a gross oversimplification, right? That's not the machlokes of the Vilna Gaon and the Balatanya, because the Vilna Gaon also understands that kol haaretz malei kvodo, right? That and leis asard pani mine, and there's no place devoid of the divine presence. But we still have distinctions
Yeah,
between the Beis Kvaros and the Beis Kisei and the Beis Hamikdash and the Beis Knesses. And that is how Hashem has decided to, and again, that's what this Sha'ar is about. That's what this Sha'ar Gimel is about, how to put these ideas together. And so, yes, he's proceeding slowly, he's plodding along, and he's putting out the dangers and giving us caution. He is going to talk more about it, of how to put these ideas together. But
so
he's not a simpleton saying that, God is absent from a makom metunaf. He's not saying that. He's saying we have to respect the boundaries of halacha. And let me say, give just a little bit of an inkling into where he's going to go with it. He's going to differentiate between our perspective and God's perspective. From Hashem's perspective, it's as if nothing still exists. Like before he created and after he created, he didn't do anything to himself. He's still everywhere and everything. But from our perspective, I'm me and you're you, and the bathroom is the bathroom and the shul is the shul, and it's all very different. And I have an obligation that God gave me to respect boundaries and to keep Daled Amos Shel Halacha, to keep all of Shulchan Aruch. So there's a distinction between Ledidan and Ledidhu, for us and for him. God's perspective is totally different than our perspective, and he's going to build a lot on that theme. Okay?
just wondering about the motivation. I mean, on the one hand, he wants, I guess, the readers to know that you can study. You don't have to be a chassid in order to study Kabbalah.
Right.
It's not like, we don't we don't know anything about Kabbalah, it's not
Not
our
bad.
field. But at the same time, he's very wary and critical of people that study Kabbalah.
I think you're putting your finger on something very important, Jay, that brought the Chaim Volozhin to write the Sefer, The Vilna Gaon was a giant of Kabbalah. Okay, the giants of Kabbalah after Reb Shimon Bar Yochai are the Arizal, the Vilna Gaon, and the Ramchal. And the Vilna Gaon said about the Shaigis Aryeh, "Benigle hu ubenistar ani ani," meaning maybe he was moida, the Shaigis Aryeh was greater than him in the revealed Torah, but the Vilna Gaon was taking the crown for the hidden Torah. So the Vilna Gaon was a giant in Kabbalah, and Chaim Volozhin was his Talmud who got the Yisoidus of the Sisrei Torah, the secrets of the Torah of the Kabbalah from the Vilna Gaon. So on the one hand, he loves the Kabbalah and has so much respect for it, and he doesn't want people to think if you want to get into Kabbalah, you have to become a chassid. You got to go to the Magid of Mezerich, you got to go to the Balatanya, you got to go to a different camp. I'm going to lose my people. That's what he's fighting against. That's why he's publishing now, because I see that people are drawn after the deep ideas of the Kabbalah, and that's predicted really by the Zohar, that at the end of days, before the Or of Melech Mashiach, there's going to be an explosion, a flood of divine wisdom, and people are going to be thirsty for words of Divrei Torah, specifically Divrei Kabbalah. So that's part of God's historical plan. And so I can't have it that all the Litvishers are going to become Hasidim. So I got to feed them some Kabbalah. I got to give them some exposure, share the beautiful ideas of the Kabbalah with the Litvish community so that they don't go off to Hasidus. But I need to warn them to be careful on the way. So I think, Jay, you put your finger on a very important social dynamic, that he needs to give his people a pathway into the world of Sisrei Torah, of the Pnimius Torah. And that's what the Nefesh HaHaim is really for and what it's about. It's an answer to that problem of how can I open up the world of Pnimius Torah to the Yeshiva Bachrim, who are otherwise, they're going to go out to the Hasidic fields. And this is, this went into the 20th century. If you're a Yeshiva Bacher and you go to Chabad to hear a Shir in Tanya, you can get kicked out of yeshiva. Okay, it's a serious thing. So this, this rivalry and this seriousness about the importance of Jewish philosophy and the ideas here is very, very serious stuff.
So is Hasidism not a legitimate Jewish path? I mean,
Well,
how far would he go?
I'm certainly not going to say that at this time in history. But there's some issues with it. Okay, false messianism.
Issues with everything.
No, but false messianism is a big deal. There are legitimate critiques of the Hasidic circles to this very day. The Chavetz Chaim said particularly about Chabad, Satmar, and Breslov. And all those movements have a lot of power in them, but they also have some issues. And I don't want to go too far into it and be against them. I just don't want to go there right now.
Especially on tape.
Exactly. I'm finishing up the chapter. So this is what's brought me to initiate discussion of this matter. So yes, I want to talk about this, but yes, I need to warn you, be careful. Lavina buryo kol ma sheramzu lanu razal bezeh v'hinem kechol darkei Hashem yesharim yelchu bam ve'arishayim yikashlu bam. So the righteous can go in the way of God, and the wicked will falter, and it'll be bad for them. And he ends with the words ve'eis lasois Hashem heferu torasecha. So he already differentiated between the Rishonim, like the Rokeach and the Ramban. They only spoke about these high issues, beremez, and I'm talking about them, explicitly, and putting my book out in the Rishus HaRabim. But I'm doing that because it needs to be done, because I'm fighting. Otherwise, there's going to be a flood of Jews leaving one path for another, which the Vilna Gaon and other rabbis were concerned would lead Jews off the derech.
It's kind of out there already. Maybe he felt in a distorted way. So if it's out there, it needs to be, given over the way it needs to be given over in the proper way.
Exactly right. Okay, thanks for being here. We'll go weiter next week. Bezat Hashem. Take good care.
Thank you.
So,
My pleasure. Good night.
yeah, so.